All right, hello everybody. We are back for the next part of Unit 4, and it's policy making. There'll be this quick intro, 6 slide lecture today, plus the beginning of economic policy. So, policy will include economic policy and then domestic or social policy, and that'll be what we do. So, we'll start out though with how we compare ideology and how ideology fits into policymaking, and then we'll start with the beginning of econ today. So, let's get started. So, ideological influences, so that's what we're talking about. Ideology, of course, shapes our policy debate and our choices. And then the idea, again, is that range of values, beliefs, attitudes, those kinds of things that influence the development of public policy over time. So that's where we sort of start. So let's talk about a couple of different theories. We've got the idea of majoritarian policymaking. And remember, this goes back to Unit 1, and some of these things we talk about today will go back to Unit 1. The majoritarian idea, and that's the idea, of course, that the interaction of the people and the government that we put in place in the United States, it's put there to carry out the will of the majority, right? And we know that. However, we also know, and this is the most important part again that we're talking with Unit 1 again, is that the framers did create the system that so that the majority can't just do whatever it wants to the minority. And when we're talking about minority here, we're talking about minority in numbers and votes and policy-wise, not in race or ethnicity or things like that. So we do have the system with all those guarantees in place to make sure that the majority just cannot run over the minority, and so that's what we're still talking about that. So remember, it's a majoritarian system with significant minority protection. Okay, the other one is interest group policymaking, and we haven't talked a lot about interest groups. We talked a little bit about them, and remember, interest groups, they're going to have a strong influence on all three branches in the process, and we'll talk about one influence in each kind of branch here. You got a bunch of them there on that little poster of the representative of the thousands and thousands that are out there. Of course, they fund candidates, right? They provide experts, and they submit for the judicial side. They submit those amicus briefs, friends of the court, if you recall from Unit 2, where they do that as well. So interest groups have a strong role in policy development, and it creates, again, a term from Unit 1, that pluralistic approach where you've got different avenues to be able to affect government. Again, diverse interests of the population, and the idea here: compete to create policy and compromises. There's all sorts of ways to get in. If you're blocked out of one way, you can get in another way, and things like that. So that's the whole idea. Remember, pluralism as an approach. Okay. So the balance, though. Remember, one of the things that we have to do, and we talked about this all the way back in Unit 1 as well, and also when we were in Unit 3 talking about the Bill of Rights and the natural rights and the things we have and the things government cannot do, right, is we have to balance liberty and order, because we have a core belief of liberty, and we also have a core belief that government should promote stability and order. And that is a constant battle that we face. That scale on the right side there is a good indicator. We have to balance those two things, and it's the court system, of course, that does that, right? Because it should be based on the Constitution, but of course, the Constitution has been interpreted differently over time. So there's been a difference. There's a time where liberty reigns more free, and then there's been times where insecurity reigns more free, and we're constantly going through that balance there. So that's also part of the problem with policy and the issues involved with policy. And lastly, for this part, um, again, remember Unit 1. This is that circle we did, that policy circle that we did. So I'm just going to go through it really quickly again. And the things that are important there are going to be bolded, right? The people, the interests of the people. We use linkage institutions, those variety of things. There's 4 of them, remember, to get on the policy agenda. Then it becomes, if it's important enough, it becomes a political issue, dealt with by the policymaking institutions. That's the branches of government, right? The policymaking institutions. Once something happens, there it becomes public policy. So it's spending and taxing and the various laws and the various rulings of the court system and all of that kind of stuff. And that all becomes public policy. And then, of course, when the policies start to affect us, Then we start that process over again, going, oh, that's not what we wanted, or that's what we wanted, so let's do more, or let's stop doing this and go to that, something like that. So remember that whole circular flow process, and it all goes into this policy formation. Okay, so that's it for this little intro portion. Now we're going to start with, but we won't finish, of course, economic policy. So we'll see you there in the next video.